There's a rhythm to this work. A solemn, steady rhythm. You walk into the prep room early, before the world stirs, before anyone thinks about the dead. The smell of disinfectant mixes with the cold stainless steel and the hum of the air filtration system. I start my shift the same way I have for over 2 decades, checking the logbook, reviewing the intake sheet, and reading over the autopsy report if there is one. The case that morning was a 47-year-old male, John M., pronounced dead from an apparent myocardial infarction. The county medical examiner had performed the autopsy. We were contracted for embalming and viewing prep. It should have been routine. The body arrived in a sealed post-autopsy bag, the yellow tag twist tie still intact, chain of custody form signed off by the coroner transport tech. Everything appeared in order. He'd been delivered directly from the county morgue. I initialed the log, scanned the barcode, and wheeled him into our primary prep room. We always begin with an external check, verifying identifying marks, toe tag matches, visible trauma from autopsy incisions or injuries. The Y incision was clean, sutures were secure, but as I palpated the thoracic cavity during arterial prep, something felt wrong, empty. I've worked on hundreds of autopsied cases. After organ removal, the viscera are normally returned to the abdominal cavity, sometimes in a viscera bag, sometimes loose, depending on county policy. But this cavity felt incomplete. I stopped mid-injection. I gently reopened the sutures to verify placement before continuing with cavity embalming. No heart, no viscera bag, nothing. Just an open, clean cavity with minor pooling from previous drainage. My stomach sank. Not from fear. This job has taught me to detach when necessary, but from that gnawing sense that something had gone off script. Legally, medically, humanly. I double-checked the documentation. The autopsy summary from the ME's office was missing from the transport packet. That's not unusual in county cases. It's often faxed later or sent digitally, but there was no notation at all about specimen retention. No mention of the heart being withheld for biopsy or forensic review, and no chain of custody documentation to cover that gap. You learn in this work when to keep moving and when to stop everything. I stopped. I called the ME's office directly, gave the case ID, transport time, and my concern. The clerk transferred me to the pathologist on duty. She pulled up the file and went silent for a moment before saying, "That's odd. His heart should have been returned. There's no note for retention. I'll call you back." I sealed the cavity with temporary closure and documented everything. Time, photos, phone call log. Because if something gets overlooked in death, it's rarely just a clerical error. It becomes a legal one. The family had requested an open casket viewing. His wife was expecting to see him whole, peaceful. And now I was sitting with the reality that we couldn't legally complete embalming without confirmation and consent regarding the missing organ. The pathologist called back about 30 minutes later. Apparently, a forensic intern had flagged the heart for unusual lesions and placed it into the lab fridge for further analysis, but never documented the chain of custody form or updated the digital file. No malicious intent, just a breakdown in process, a mistake. But to the family, that mistake would have meant looking at their husband, their father, and knowing something was missing. A literal void where a vital part of him used to be. You can't unsee that. You can't forget it. The ME's office sent a courier to retrieve the body for reintegration. The heart was returned. I documented the receipt, re-prepped, and finally completed the cavity embalming with proper closure. The sutures were clean, internal structures restored, and his presentation was, thankfully, restored to dignity. When his wife came in the next morning, she didn't notice anything odd. She said he looked peaceful. She held his hand for nearly an hour in silence, just her and her 2 grown sons. Before leaving, she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "Thank you for making him whole again. I know he's gone, but this helps." I nodded. I didn't explain what had happened behind the scenes. That wasn't her burden to carry. That was ours. This job isn't about ghosts or flickering lights. It's about the weight of responsibility, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. That was the missing organ case. And every time I read through paperwork now, I double-check the viscera line, even when it looks routine. Because peace doesn't just happen. It's built, piece by piece, heart included.